Blog Talk Radio.
Well, here we go. It's Tuesday, and I always say it's a great day. You started out with the Talking Candid podcast. Kim Blyleven had Mandy Fisher on, the voiceover artist out of New York, and she's been to every major league baseball stadium. Boy, that's a bucket list. Then we get right into here now, Cleveland, Ohio. Move over the Flats. Move over the Browns, the Cavaliers, the Guardians. This is the American Sports History Podcast hosted by Peter Ray. Yours truly, Mark Mancini, producing it, 347-205-9631. Catch the archive on blogtalkradio.com/Mancini Sports Podcast platforms, wherever you subscribe to, powered by Mancini Media. So without further ado, it's more him, less than me. Let me lay the red carpet down, put the podium in its place, and hand off the mic. Peter, first of all, how are you? I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving, along with your great guest, James Donaldson. Second of all, how can people get a hold of you? And third of all, boy, you two guys got to go together like peanut butter and jelly, man. You guys have built something here every 2 weeks, and I can't wait to hear it every 2 weeks, and either can the listeners. So, Peter, take it away, my good friend, as I man the board for you.
Hi, Mark. I'm doing very well. Happy Thanksgiving to you. And I have a YouTube channel. I make history videos. It's my name, Peter J. Ray, R-E-A. And you're absolutely right. We have James Donaldson back, former NBA player from 1980 to 1995, and a leader in the mental health field. So it's a nice topic. It's NBA past and present and the very important mental health field. Welcome to the show again, Mr. James Donaldson.
Thank you so much, Peter, and Mark, you out there in the wings. Thank you, everyone, and especially this week. This is a week of Thanksgiving, with Thanksgiving Day coming up a couple of days from now. But I remember my old pastor used to tell us every day or every Sunday, every day above ground is a great day. And then we used to sing a wonderful old spiritual hymnal in my church called Every Day is a Day of Thanksgiving. And it's just a wonderful, you guys can YouTube it and pull it up. I'm sure other people have sung it. But that just hammers it home that every single day is a day of Thanksgiving. Don't wait until Thursday.
Yeah, that's right. Our attitude is so important, to have a positive attitude. And I have a passage from your book starting on page 33. James is the author of the book Celebrating Your Gift of Life, From the Verge of Suicide to a Life of Purpose and Joy, page 33. From Washington State University, I took a slight detour before I was able to get into the NBA, but I welcomed that detour by playing professional basketball in Siena, Italy, 1979-1980. This decision really gave me a chance to spread my wings. I became very independent and learned about the world around me. Living in another country, learning another language, and making friends who are still my friends today was an education I just can't put a price tag on. Sure, I went to Italy kicking and screaming because I wanted to play in the NBA, but I didn't know what was best for me. It turned out my coaches and my agent knew better, so they recommended a year of seasoning myself playing professional basketball full-time in Italy. That was better than sitting on a bench in the NBA and never getting the chance to play, or worse, being cut early, so I would never be able to develop a full-fledged career. I think that's such a wonderful passage there, because it just shows in life we have our plans. It shows, we need to learn lessons. You have this patience. And here you thought, oh, geez, I want to, and then you had this wonderful experience, became international. Do you want to talk about that whole experience of postponing the NBA and going to Europe?
Yeah, I sure will. Let's talk about that, because all of us are faced with those decisions from time to time of what is best. And I think a lot of us in our youthful optimism, hope springs eternal, that I'm going to be the one, make decisions that aren't necessarily the best, especially in the long range. They might be okay in the short range, but in the long range, and I ended up with a 20-year professional basketball career, which is a long-range plan. My coaches and my agents really knew much better. They said, hey, James, if you get over to Italy, and I went over there kicking and screaming. If you went to Italy, You get a chance to play every game, 40 minutes. They leave you out there the whole time. You get your double points. You get your double rebounds. You get your 4 or 5 block shots. You are developing into a bona fide professional athlete now. If you came to the NBA and sat on the Sonics bench, or worse yet, being cut in training camp and then floundering around for the next couple of years before my career is pretty much over, that would have been the downside of all that. So I've always been, especially when I was my younger days, someone who was willing to be coached, someone who, valued the wisdom of those who had been there and done that before me, who had a lot more knowledge than I did about the situation. So I just took it on a leap of faith that my coaches and my agent knew best, and they said, hey, let's take that detour. You can always come back and try the NBA if this doesn't work out, or if it does work out. Come on back and try the NBA and prove your point then, but you'll be a much, much better developed player and person by then.
And you had that, and you had this experience that you never expected of enjoying being over in Italy and growing in that regard, being another culture.
That's right. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I got over there, and I really immersed myself into the Italian culture. And remember, I played also 2 years in Spain, 2 years in Greece, along with my NBA career. And once I got over there, I just totally immersed myself into the international way of life, learning the language. I was fluent in Italian, eating some of the greatest home-cooked Italian meals by wonderful wonderful Italian families that took me in time and time again. Learning the culture, learning the great history and the great civilizations of Spain and Italy and Greece that ruled the world 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. And so I learned all of that, and to this day I still have an immense thirst for additional knowledge and additional education about our international world around us, spending a lot of years in China the last 10 years. Doing study abroad programs and education programs for the Chinese youth, learning Mandarin Chinese now. This has always been me. Just kind of, it's so much more than, I like to say, so much more than just a basketball player. I tell people basketball is something I happen to be doing and happen to do well for 20 years, but it never was all of who I was and who I am.
Yeah, it's interesting because basketball, you got all these international players now in the NBA, and basketball is probably the most international sport because soccer is not really is popular like in Europe and South America, but yeah, the NBA all over Africa, Asia, and it's the number one sport in the Philippines where I was for many years. So that's and so you were part of that trend, that international trend. Micah from Woonsocket, Rhode Island, thanks for listening. He says hi. He loves the show, a lot of knowledge and expertise. He says it's not peanut butter and jelly, two dudes that are driven and heard in Ohio. Keep up the great work. Dave from Bellevue, Washington, heard your show in Philadelphia. James, Detroit's trying to make a name for themselves. The Barber and the Brawl, get those Sonics back here. Anybody know what Fred Brown and Detlef Schrempf are doing now?
Yes. Both of them are great teammates, former teammates of mine. Fred, when I was with the Seattle Supersonics, Freddie Downtown Brown, he was around before the three-point shot, and then he started playing during the three-point era as well. Fred is essentially retired. He still does some business, especially internationally. He was in banking for quite a while, about 20 years, with C First Bank, which became Bank of America here in the Seattle area. He does still some financial portfolio management for some of his. He was one of the high wealth, high net worth individual private bankers, and so he still does some individual portfolio management for some of those folks. I see him on occasion. He's basically retired now in the Seattle area. But when we get together for Sonic events and former NBA player events, Fred's always amongst us. Detlef Schrempf got into the hedge fund and capital investment type business. He's a partner in a very large, prominent firm here in the Seattle Bellevue area, And he's been doing that for quite a while. He's not as visible as Fred is or as I am around the community, but on occasion he does come out and do some things with us. He and his wife, Mary, ran a great foundation for years, raising money for the disadvantaged populations and disadvantaged youth. They did that for 25 years or so, and it's just a wonderful give back to the community. And both those guys are great community guys and great friends of mine.
Now back onto the mental health field again. Your book, page 42, celebrating your gift of life during your depression and when you were suicidal. You wrote you were talking with your doctor, and the doctor said, "Hey James, if you take your life, so many people are going to miss you, and so many people are not going to understand. So many people care for you. So many people love you." I took those words in, but I couldn't connect with any of them. I looked right back at him and said, "Doc, nobody's going to miss me. Nobody cares about me. Nobody's going to be disappointed." That's exactly how I felt. That's why when we are in those deep, dark places, we have to have sense enough to trust a friend or someone who cares about us to help guide us through. The toughest thing is going through it alone. It is particularly difficult for men to speak up, reach out, and show weakness by letting people know exactly what they are going through. A lot of men I've talked to won't even tell their spouses what's going on. They might say things or behave in ways that are out of character, but they don't share what's going on. That leaves the spouse in the awkward position of knowing something is not quite right, but not to what extent. So, men, I really encourage you to reach out. Find a support buddy who can be there for you at all times. Find someone with whom you can let your hair down, talk with over a drink or coffee, and just really open yourself up to being vulnerable so they can help you. That's how I made it through.
Yeah.
Any comments, Mr. Donaldson?
Yes, I mean, that's so right on point, and that's exactly where I was. And the vast majority of people who are going through mental challenges, there seems to be a disconnect between the external love and support that is always there, but you just feel so removed and disconnected from that. And I told my doc, as serious as I could be, that doc, nobody's going to miss me, nobody cares about me, nobody loves me, and it was one of the most difficult and dark times I went through during that week that I saw my doctor, really contemplating taking my life, because I was at that point where I just didn't think anybody was going to care or going to miss me. And so I really encourage men, especially because when it comes down to it, I'm a typical guy. I try to be better than typical and express my feelings and talk and, have conversations about these kind of things. But us guys, we really need to say, hey, let me find somebody I can talk to and share what I'm going through. And I know it's hard to talk to your significant other a lot of times. They're not a good old boy down the street or one of the guys you hang out with. But that's fine. At least let her know or him know that, you're struggling, that you need some additional support. You may not even know what that additional support is at this point, but you just need them to be there for you, supporting you, encouraging you to get through this very difficult time that you're going through. We can do it. I mean, I know we're creatures of nature, us guys. I know we grow up as little boys don't cry and boys will be boys. But when we grow up, we've got to be bigger and better than that and be able to reach on beyond that training and that conditioning that we had when we were little boys, and allow yourself to cry and allow yourself to reach out and talk to people and let them know what you're going through. Ron
from Vail, Colorado, welcome to the show. Thanks for listening. Ron says he heard this show, or he heard us talk about the tough. He heard you, James, talk about the toughest centers you played a few weeks back. He wants to know your take on the toughest power forwards, top 5. He loves your story, and he thinks this show needs to go national. He thinks it's that good, and he really enjoys it. So, who are the best power forwards, top 5, Mr. Donaldson?
Wow, that is a big ask. But I've played against so many great power forwards. I'm going to choose one of my favorite teammates as well, as my number one power forward I would start out with, and that's Karl the Mailman Malone. Karl Malone was a man's man. He was a man among boys so many times. Physically, just so powerful, so fast. He ran the court as fast as any of the guards did. He was always out there leaking out for that outlet pass from John Stockton and slamming it back home. And then he was a tough guy. He rebounded hard. He played great defense. He didn't back down from anybody. So Karl Malone has to be one of my all-time favorite guys. I look at guys like Kevin McHale, who played power forward. A different style of game than Karl Malone, but unstoppable down low in the low post with all those great up and under moves and drop steps. And, he had great footwork that never failed him. You look at other power forwards, and now you start getting into more of a blend of power forwards like a Dirk Nowitzki, who can play inside and outside. He wasn't a great rebounder, but he did just about everything that needed to be done on the basketball court time after time. I'm gonna take you fans way back to a great power forward I watched growing up. I never got a chance to play against him, George McGinnis with the Indiana Pacers ABA. George McGinnis was just a huge hulk of a man and just was so fluid out there. And those were the great ABA days that guys like George McGinnis were running the paint. And, true power forwards to me are not afraid to back down. And they won't back down, especially against the big physical centers that we played against back in those days as well. I give you those four right now. I'll think of a fifth one in a moment as we keep talking. But if any of you callers out there have any ideas, let me know too.
Trent from Oceanside, California. Hey, James, do you ever think the NBA will come back to San Diego? And by the way, keep spreading your story. You never know who you're saving.
Yeah, thank you so much, Trent. And I know you're right. I know that so many people hear the story, and I just hope that they reach out for help if they're struggling, especially the guys, but, women too and everybody. I hope the NBA comes back to San Diego. I loved playing in San Diego with the Clippers. We had a very, very talented team all around the roster, up and down, and every position. Terry Cummins was Rookie of the Year. Bill Walton was there. Jerome Whitehead, Norm Nixon, Derek Smith, Greg Kelser, Michael Brooks. The list goes on and on of great players. And then we made a big blockbuster trade and brought in Marcus Johnson and Harvey Ketchens and Junior Bridgman from Milwaukee when we traded Terry Cummings to Milwaukee. So, we always had great players, but we just never have been able to gel and have the great chemistry it takes to win championships. San Diego's a fantastic town, one of the most beautiful cities in the country. They need to have a winner, though, for them to come in off those beautiful beaches and that idyllic weather and come inside and watch a basketball game. They need to have a winner, and they just never have been blessed to have a great winner down there.
I have another excerpt from your book, page 44. Now, this is when you started reaching out. You were able to help others, and you were talking to one of your friend who was a doctor, and you said, I let him know he's important, loved, and matters. Those are the things we tend to forget when we are in those deep, dark, desperate places. When trying to support another, it's best not to act like you have all the answers or be judgmental. Just be a friend with an attentive ear. That's what we all need the most during times of duress and stress that we just don't think we can handle anymore. Those are some of the things we can do and we have to do when someone reaches out to us in desperation. Offer them help. Yeah. Also, since my teacher friend and I are both really strong Christians, I constantly reminded her of God's love for us. I reminded her that God would not want us to end this gift of life we are given. And I told her God is there, even when it doesn't seem like it. Even in my darkest days, when I was totally and absolutely alone, I knew one thing for sure. God was still with me. Of course, I didn't understand why God was letting me go through these things. I think that's where my anger came from. Sometimes we don't have the same understanding God does. But now that I've gone through that difficult time, I realize why God left me there, why God gave me just enough courage and encouragement to hang on. God did it because I would have a story to tell and share with people around the world. God did it because people look at me as a big physical specimen of a human being, strong and powerful, tall and athletic, and yet they will see that all of this happened to me, and it just broke me down to being a babbling baby sometimes. He left me here to let men know it's okay not to be okay. There's no shame in that game, and we men, who have for the most part been brought up not to cry or show weakness, need to realize when something is not quite right with us and to allow ourselves to reach out for help and support. God left me here to tell my story so I can continue reaching out to our young people, letting them know there is hope, letting them know there will be a tomorrow and that people do care about and love them, even if they can't feel it right now. That realization will be there as soon as the veils of darkness lift a little. It took me nearly 8 months before the darkness started lifting for me, before I finally started seeing that, yes, there is a future filled with wonderful opportunities directly ahead for me. It may not be exactly what I wanted, but it will be there. Any comments, Mr. Donaldson?
Yes, absolutely. I remember that conversation with my friend so well, my teacher friend. She was really at the verge of ending her life, suicidal. And I ended up making a call to the police to see if they'd go by and do a welfare check, where they just go by and check on a person because you requested them to. She got so furious with me that I let out her little secret that she was really struggling. And she, it almost ended our friendship. We don't talk nearly as much as we used to, but I'm still a dear friend of hers, and she's still a dear friend of mine. And I did it because I care. And I want everybody out there to don't worry about the repercussions of somebody being angry with you because you told their little secret they're not feeling so well, or that they're thinking about taking their life. Don't worry about that. If they're still here, we pray God that they will still be here throughout the rest of the time they're supposed to be on earth. You have plenty of time to patch up that friendship and that relationship, but you've got to do what you got to do. If the police need to go by and check on somebody, please call the police and have them go by and check on that person. They're not going to intervene. They're just going to go check and knock on the door, make sure they answer the door, make sure they answer the phone, that they have food, they have water, the basic necessities. I did that with my friend. She's still, I know she's forgiven me, but she just hasn't talked to me very much ever since then. But it was the right thing to do. And so we just need to be there for each other. And I think so many times we wonder and worry about what we can do. Sometimes it's nothing more than letting the other person know that they are valued, that they matter. In this day and age of, Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter and all lives matter, when it comes down to it, each and every one of us matter. And you have to let people remember and recognize the fact that they are valued and they definitely do matter. So please hang in there as best you can. And yes, there you go.
Mitchell from Kensington, Pennsylvania. His top 5 power forwards: Michael Cage, Sean Kemp, Dennis Rodman, Larry Nance, Rick Mahorn. With James Donaldson coaching them, they would destroy his Sixers of today.
Well, that's a great little list as well. I like those guys very much. They're all terrific players. You might want to throw Charles Oakley in there as well, because Charles was a beast as well. But yeah, this is the great age of basketball. I mean, we had those really defined positions. We had a 1, we had a 2 position, a 3 and a 4 and a 5, and they didn't do a lot of interchanging back then. Maybe you might have a point guard who can play a little shooting guard or what have you, but you didn't have too many centers who started popping out to the 3-point line and shooting 3-pointers. Matter of fact, I'm the answer to one of your trivia questions: who played the most games and the most amount of years without ever attempting a 3-point shot, and that's me. So I'm the answer to that trivia question. If you ever get asked that, I'm 0 for 0 on 3-point shots during my career.
Eddie from Sacramento, California. Any thoughts on Luke Walton getting fired and replaced by Alvin Gentry? country? Has he coached in every NBA city?
Well, I'm sure, a good coach is always going to reemerge somewhere, even if they start over again as an assistant coach, and work their way back up the chain of command again. Luke Walton's a good coach, good young coach. He did a good job. He doesn't have a winning record either with the Lakers or Sacramento. Sacramento Kings almost need a whole total reboot. And just kind of, I don't know if they need to clean house or get a whole new roster or what, but they haven't been good since those playoff days against the Lakers with Vlade Divac and Shaquille O'Neal and those guys going back and forth. That's when Chris Webber was there. That's when they had the best teams they ever have had. But ever since then, they just never have been in serious contention. So I think it turns into a revolving door situation if you don't have management that is really committed to winning and players that are really committed to winning and being there.
Now, you had, when you're going through your hard times, you had a clinic that failed, and you wrote in your book, but God had other plans for me. Even though that business crashed and burned, I have been able to rise out of the ashes. I have become someone who can really go out and make a difference, hopefully to thousands upon thousands of people. But even if I only make a difference to one, that will be joy divine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. It's like the old, the story that we grew up with of the man walking on the beach, and he sees all these thousands of starfish out there on the beach, basically stranded, waiting for the tide to come back in. And he picks one up and he throws it back into the water, and the person he's walking with says, "Why did you throw that starfish back in the water? That doesn't make any difference." And he said, "Well, it made a difference for that one." And that's how we have to view the work that we do. I have no idea how far and how effective my reach is, but I do know that the story that I tell and the advice I share to help people through a very difficult time is helpful no matter what. Whether they hear it this year or 5 or 10 years from now, it's going to be the same. It is not going to change. We need to be there for each other is the bottom line.
Now, you've talked about Lenny Wilkens before. I'd like to hear more about him because I find him very appealing as this very kind, peaceful, easygoing man, a guy who wasn't ranting and raving, calm, and played in Cleveland, coached in Cleveland. Can you tell us some more about Lenny Wilkens?
Lenny's been one of my all-time great coaches, mentors, friends. We're still friends to this day. He's approaching his 85th birthday in the next year or so. I get together with him, once every 2 or 3 months for breakfast, and we just the two of us. We'll sit there and we'll talk about, NBA history. Of course, he goes back a lot further than I do. When the top 50 all-time greatest NBA player list came out in 1996, I found out I played against 37 of those players, and I made a nice little ebook format for that. And I asked Lenny Wilkens if he would fill out the other 13 players who I didn't play against, and he did. He was so great with that. I mean, he talked about Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain and Bob Cousy and, Oscar Robinson, the guys I didn't play against. And Lenny had some great, great things to say about those guys that gave it a whole different perspective than I could have done secondhand. This was firsthand from Lenny Wilkens' mouth. And, he's just been a great friend. And he was there with me throughout my major open heart surgeries. He was there with me throughout my depressing times of 12 months in 2018. He has just been a rock for me to just rely on and to know that he'll always be there. And likewise, I'll always be there for him as well.
Yeah, I love the story of where he got in college. He played college ball, and I think he had an engineering degree, and he was planning to work as an engineer. And he got drafted by the St. Louis Hawks in 1957. And he's like, NBA wasn't that big of a deal then. And he thought, I'll go to train. What the heck? I'll go to this training camp. And he had no idea. Yeah. And what was he'd spend the rest of his life in so he had no plan. So I thought that was an amazing story about how his life turned out. Incredible.
That's right. And also drafted into the Army after his first or second year with St. Louis. He had to go take about a year and a half off to be enlisted. And then he came back and remade the team and kept on his career.
Yeah, what an inspiration. Well, the time has flown by. Our guest has been Mr. James Donaldson, NBA player, 1980 to 1995. He's got a book, Celebrating Your Gift of Life, From the Verge of Suicide to a Life of Purpose and Joy. Hopefully he'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll try to schedule that. Any final words for our audience tonight, Mr. James Donaldson?
Well, I'd love for your audience to get a hold of an actual copy, a signed copy of the book, Celebrating Your Gift of Life. And I actually signed them. I actually packaged them up and mailed them out to you. You can do that at celebratingyourgiftoflife.com. And for the holidays, I'm putting together an ebook and also an audio ebook format of Celebrating Your Gift of Life, using my own voice narrating throughout the book. So look for that to come out around the Christmas time.
Well, that's wonderful. It's wonderful having you on the show again, Mr. James Donaldson. Next week we're going to have Marty Gitlin on the show. Marty's got a good book coming out in the spring about Sam McDowell, former MLB player, played for Cleveland. And we're going to have Sam McDowell middle of December 14th. So look for it. Marty Gitlin next week has written quite a lot of books on sports history, and popular culture. So we'll look forward to that. Dear listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Good night, everybody. Thanks again, Mr. James Donaldson.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.